Here's something almost every new gardener believes. If you want more food, you need more ground. A bigger bed, more rows, more square footage. Makes sense on paper. Except it's not actually true. Not for every vegetable, anyway. There's a whole group of plants that do better crammed into a pot on your patio than they ever do spread out in open soil. Cleaner roots, fewer pests, sometimes double the harvest in a quarter of the space. Today I'm walking you through the first 8, and stick around, because the vegetable that closes out this whole series in part 2 is one most people have never even tried growing in a pot, and it might be the most productive plant on this entire list. Let's get into it. At number 15, beets. Most people grow beets straight in the garden bed and just accept whatever shape comes out of the ground. Lopsided, forked, sometimes barely bigger than a marble because they hit a rock 3 inches down. The truth is, beets are pickier about soil texture than people realize. Any resistance underground, compacted clay, a buried root, a stone, and the beet just stops expanding evenly. You end up with something shaped more like a question mark than a vegetable. Move that same beet into a container filled with loose, sifted potting mix, and it has nothing to push against. It just grows. Round, smooth, symmetrical. There's a bonus, too. Containers heat up faster in early spring, and beets germinate noticeably quicker in warm soil. A gardener who's short on patience, which, let's be honest, is most of us in March, gets a head start of almost a week compared to sowing straight into cold ground. And because you control the mix from day one, there's no guesswork about drainage. Beets hate sitting in soggy soil almost as much as they hate rocks. A crooked beet still tastes fine, but a clean one? That's the difference between a chore and a small win. Moving down to number 14, Swiss chard. Chard has a reputation as a plant and forget-it garden bed crop. And in fairness, it usually survives just fine out there. But survive isn't the same as thrive. In open beds, chard leaves sit low enough that soil splashes up onto them every time it rains hard. That grit gets into the leaf folds, and, frankly, nobody wants to wash sand out of their dinner. Slugs also love the humidity at ground level, and chard is basically a slug buffet once they find it. Lift chard into a container, and both problems mostly disappear. The leaves stay elevated, clean, and noticeably less chewed up by the time you're ready to harvest. Here's the part that surprises people, though. Chard actually gets more productive under mild stress. A container naturally limits root space just enough that the plant redirects energy into leaf production instead of sprawling roots it doesn't need. Cut and come again harvesting works even better in a pot, because you're not bending over into a crowded bed to snip the outer leaves. A single 16-inch pot of chard, kept near the kitchen door, can realistically feed a household side dishes for an entire summer without ever needing to be replanted. Low effort, high reward. That's basically the theme of this whole video. At number 13, dwarf zucchini. Full disclosure, this one comes with a catch, and I'll get to it. But hear me out. Everyone assumes zucchini needs acres of room, because the vining varieties genuinely do take over a garden bed like it's a hostile invasion. But there are compact, bush-type, dwarf, zucchini varieties bred specifically to stay small, and those varieties do dramatically better in a large container than people expect. Why? Airflow mostly. Zucchini is notorious for powdery mildew, and mildew loves still, humid air trapped low in a crowded bed. Up in a container, elevated and usually with more space around the leaves, air moves through the plant instead of sitting on it. Fewer white, dusty leaves. Longer productive season. There's also a pollination perk nobody talks about. Container zucchini near a doorway or patio tends to get visited by more pollinators simply because it's more exposed, not tucked behind 3 rows of taller plants. Now, the catch. This only works with dwarf or patio varieties, and you need a genuinely large pot. Think half a wine barrel, not a windowsill planter. Skip that step and you'll end up with a root-bound, sad little plant that produces 2 zucchinis and gives up. Get the variety and the pot size right, though, and one plant can outproduce an entire in-ground row. At number 12, turnips. Turnips get lumped in with tough root vegetables that grow anywhere, and that reputation isn't wrong. Exactly, but it hides how much better they can perform when given loose, easy soil. In compacted ground, a turnip has to physically force the surrounding dirt aside as it swells. that takes energy, slows growth, and often produces a woody, fibrous turnip that's more work to eat than it's worth. A container skips all of that resistance. The turnip just expands into loose mix with zero friction, which means faster growth and a noticeably sweeter, more tender bulb. Turnips actually get bitter and tough the longer they struggle, so speed matters here more than people assume. There's a speed bonus too. Because containers warm faster in spring, turnip seeds germinate earlier, and you can realistically pull small, sweet, baby turnips in about 5 weeks. That's fast enough to sneak in 2 or even 3 plantings before summer heat arrives. And since turnip greens are edible too, a container gives you a 2-for-1 harvest. Tender greens for salads early on, sweet little bulbs a few weeks later. For a vegetable most people write off as rustic, that's a surprisingly elegant little container crop. At number 11, sugar snap peas. Peas seem like a classic garden bed crop, long rows, sprawling vines, that kind of thing. But peas actually have shallow, fairly modest root systems, which makes them far more container-friendly than most people assume. The real advantage in a pot comes down to 2 things: drainage and support. Peas rot fast in soggy soil, and garden beds, especially clay-heavy ones, hold water longer than peas are comfortable with. A container with a well-draining mix lets excess water escape immediately, which means healthier roots and far less risk of the vine collapsing halfway through the season. The second advantage is structure. Because a container is small and fixed in place, you can build a tight, simple trellis right into the pot, a few bamboo stakes and some twine, and every single pod stays elevated, visible, and easy to pick. No hunting through tangled vines at ground level to find hidden pods hiding under leaves. There's also a cool weather bonus. Because containers can be moved, you can shift peas into a shadier spot the moment late spring heat starts pushing them toward bolting, buying yourself another week or 2 of sweet, crisp pods before the plant gives out. A single trellis pot of peas is one of the most satisfying small space, big payoff crops on this whole list. At number 10, kale. If you've ever grown kale in a garden bed, you already know its biggest enemy isn't weather, it's cabbage worms and aphids. Ground-level kale sits right at insect height, and it shows in every lacehold leaf by midsummer. Elevate that same kale into a container, and it's simply harder for a lot of crawling pests to reach. It's not a perfect fix, but the difference in leaf damage is noticeable enough that most container-grown kale needs far less intervention overall. Kale also happens to be one of the most forgiving plants for pot culture. It tolerates a wide range of container sizes, keeps producing new leaves for months with regular harvesting, and, bonus, actually improves in flavor after a light frost. So a container you can drag onto a covered porch during a cold snap keeps producing weeks after in-ground kale has been wiped out. For anyone in an apartment or a small rental with no real yard, kale is close to a perfect starter crop. It's nearly impossible to kill, forgives inconsistent watering, and rewards you with a continuous trickle of harvest rather than one big, overwhelming crop. Low drama, high output. Exactly what a beginner container garden needs. At number 9, chives. Chives are one of those herbs people plant once in the garden and then completely lose track of, buried behind taller plants, forgotten until they've gone to seed everywhere. In a container, chives become something you actually use. Compact, clump-forming, and genuinely happy in a small pot, they thrive on neglect in the best way. Inconsistent watering barely slows them down, and they bounce back from hard cuts within days. The real win is proximity. A pot of chives on a windowsill or right by the stove means you're actually snipping fresh chives onto eggs, soups, and baked potatoes instead of walking to a garden bed you visit twice a month. They also self-seed less aggressively when contained, which, if you've ever had garden bed chives take over an entire corner, is honestly a relief rather than a limitation. Small plant, small pot, disproportionately large payoff in the kitchen. At number 8, bush-type summer squash. Squash and pumpkins usually get the same warning. Give them room, or they'll swallow your entire garden. And for vining types, that's fair. But compact bush varieties flip that assumption almost completely. Because a bush squash naturally grows upright and contained rather than sending out long runners, it fits a large container's footprint without the plant fighting its own shape. That alone solves the "it ate my garden" problem most people associate with squash. The bigger advantage, though, is disease pressure. Ground-level squash leaves that stay damp overnight are a magnet for fungal issues, and once one leaf gets infected, it spreads through a dense bed fast. A container-grown plant, especially one placed somewhere with good afternoon sun and airflow, dries out faster after rain or watering, and that alone can be the difference between a plant that produces for 6 weeks and one that produces for 16. There's also a harvesting perk. Fruit sits up and out where you can actually see it, instead of hiding under a canopy the size of a beach umbrella, which means fewer overripe, baseball bat-sized squash discovered a week too late. Right variety, right pot size, and squash stops being the garden bully. It becomes one of the most efficient producers you own. So that's the first 8, and already you can see the pattern. It's rarely about the vegetable itself. It's about drainage, airflow, warmth, and how much control you actually have over the environment a plant is growing in. A container just happens to make all 4 of those easier to manage than an open garden bed ever will. In part 2, we're counting down the final 7, including a fruit most people are shocked even can grow in a pot, and the single plant that, once you try it in a container, you'll probably never plant in the ground again. If any of these 8 surprised you, the second half is going to surprise you even more. See you there.